Welcome to the Career Meets World podcast, Kyle. I am so grateful you're on with us today. How are you today?
I am doing well. As we were talking about before, it's been a busy day, lots of clients landing interviews. So I've been on back-to-back coaching sessions all day, and there's really nothing I'd rather be doing all day, besides maybe being at Disneyland right now.
We'll get into the Disneyland part in a second, but I know that you are hungry to teach people, help people, and that's been a big part of who you've become, right? You've become this household name that really inspires a lot of people in Silicon Valley to land incredible jobs. But I also want to discover who you are and make sure that people really have a good pulse on how you got here, because that's the fun part of the journey.
Mhm.
So, can you provide some quick context about kind of what you do? And then we'll get into some more rapid fire questions.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, when people are trying to find jobs, often in Silicon Valley and high tech, they reach out to me. So I help them rethink, reimagine, recreate their career stories and help them land at those big, amazing companies. If that's what they're aiming for, it could be Amazon, it could be Microsoft, Google, LinkedIn, you name it. And clients come to me and say, Kyle, I want to work with these big companies, but I have no idea how to break in and get seen. So I help them figure out what's unique and different about them and own it and then share it so they can go land those amazing jobs. And it's so exciting and so rewarding to do this work. And I really help people two ways. One is the documents, the resume, cover letter, LinkedIn, those things you just need to find a job. And then on the other side, it's really that transformational work, people coming to me and saying, Kyle, I don't know what sets me apart from the other 10,000 applicants. Help me out. Or, Kyle, I did land this amazing job at Facebook and I'm still not happy. What's going on? And really breaking that down and diving deeper to figure out who people are beyond just their career.
I love that. And I love the focus as well, right? You're getting really tactical with people. What I'm curious to understand is, where did this inspiration to start this business come from? Like, how did it all start?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite questions that people ask. It was 100% by accident. So I started on Fiverr in college, literally charged $5 for resume reviews, LinkedIn profile summaries. And it was just supposed to be to afford Starbucks, to afford Subway. And then over time, people kept reaching out. They're like, hey, you helped my friend with their resume. You helped my friend with their LinkedIn. Can you help me? And over time, I gained this reputation for helping people in Silicon Valley because I just happened to live in San Francisco when doing these resume reviews, when writing these LinkedIn profile summaries. I didn't set out to be this expert in Silicon Valley and high tech. And that just kept growing and growing and growing. But then when I reflect back and look at all the other careers I had and the careers that I aspired to, I had went to undergrad in health education. I did my master's in public administration. I wanted to run a hospital or a nonprofit. I really loved helping people. So while it started as just a side hustle, I do love helping people. And I also love working. And this career coaching and resume writing is me getting to help people do work they love. And it's just blended into this amazing career and business I never imagined was possible.
Short of the fact that the business itself is genuinely helping people, what I find fascinating and intriguing, and I kind of want to double click on really, is the story around the fact that it was an accidental business,
Mhm.
right? You didn't have this vision that you're going to go out and be a resume writer and
Yeah.
inspire people to figure out what jobs they want. And that's such a common story in today's world, where you have an accidental business, you have other passions, you
Mhm.
have other things you care about in life. And the underlying foundation was really that you love to help people.
Yeah.
So, what did you learn in that process, right? Because essentially you started this business by charging people $5 an hour. What were some of your key takeaways when you started down this endeavor?
What I learned is that you can't plan everything. And I am super type A. I'm a recovering perfectionist that wants to plan everything. And I learned that you cannot plan everything. Even when you have this amazing plan of, okay, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to get my undergraduate degree in nursing, which is what I originally pursued. But then I ended up having too many units and had to switch majors. Then I went to go for my master's in healthcare administration, but I figured out that's not what I wanted to pursue. So I had to switch to a master's in public administration. Then after graduation, I landed what I thought was a dream job. Ended up not being a dream job, so I had to quickly find another job. You can have all these things you plan and have this perfect 3 year, 5 year, 10 year plan, and then things aren't going to go according to plan. And that's the biggest lesson I've taken away from my career and my business is no matter how much you plan, things aren't going to go according to your plan. And you just have to be able to roll with those punches.
Yeah, it's so important to be able to adapt to the current moment. And if 2020 taught us anything, is that adaptation is critical. What I think you and I often have heard, either in our careers or obviously as you're helping job candidates, is that managers often want to know, what do you see yourself doing in 3 to 5 years? So, given that you know that action plans often get derailed or they have something new pop up, how do you recommend people answer that question?
I think it's a silly question. And if anyone's still asking that question of candidates, you need to think of better questions. I always like working backwards from what do you want this person to achieve in this role? How will you know you hired the right person in 3 to 6 months? And then work backwards to ask better questions that are really going to help you evaluate this person's success. And then if you're a job seeker who lands in an interview and they're actually asking you this not very good question, think about, okay, why are they asking me this question? That's what I do when I coach my clients to interview, is why are they asking this question? And they're trying to figure out, likely, are you going to stick around? So what answer can you give them that's going to demonstrate that you want to grow with this company? Is it, I don't know, seek a new role in this company. I want to be able to grow into a different department. Think about what the longevity opportunities are with this organization and how you can share an answer that aligns with that. And I'm not saying lie. I'm not saying you need to fluff your answer, but just think about what they want to hear and then work your answer backwards from that, while also remaining true to who you are and where you might see yourself in the future. And not just big goals, but where you might see yourself as a human, as a person in the future.
Yeah, it's really important to understand that this is really all this delicate dance, right? Business essentially is a game, and we all have to play it better than the next person, but we have to be authentic in the process. And I love
Mhm.
the fact that you're able to kind of combine those two things together, because it's critical to be able to communicate that during the interview process. So oftentimes, I know, again, we've seen different people kind of stumble through interviews, or a lot of people unfortunately suffered through a layoff last year. I personally have been laid off in the past, so I know what it feels like and deeply empathize with those people. And it takes some time to kind of get your confidence back, right? To get your mojo back and really get back in the flow. So again, I'm curious, kind of what are some of the commonalities that you see or trends that you're seeing in everyone that you're talking to about what helps people rebound? What really gets people to kick back into gear and say, like, yeah, I have an incredible past and let me share it with you. And I can add a tremendous amount of value to your company.
Yeah, you mentioned the word confidence, and at least 95% of my clients' confidence is the major issue that they're facing. Without a doubt, when clients start talking within a minute or two of consultations with prospective clients, I'm usually like, okay, let's talk about the real issue here. You're talking about your resume and it not working. The real issue is confidence. Let's talk about how we can deal with that. Or you're talking about starting a side hustle or turning your side hustle into a full-time business. Let's talk about the confidence issue or the lack of confidence here. Almost every issue that people are facing often comes down to having a lack of confidence or just not having enough confidence for what they want to pursue. So I love working with people to figure out how can we boost that confidence. And the people I work with, they're in high tech, they're in Silicon Valley, they've already achieved a bunch of amazing stuff. So I encourage my clients to reflect on all that amazingness they've already achieved. To look at past performance reviews, look at past letters of rec, reach out to colleagues and supervisors, friends and family to boost you up. And don't think you all just have to manifest all this amazing reflection from yourself, but look at those people and say, hey, can you give me some feedback on what I've done that's already worked well? And then second, remember you don't have to go at this alone. It's okay to seek out and invest in mentors and coaching and an accountability system.
Yeah.
So one, just make sure to look at all the amazing stuff you've done. And then two, invest in a network around you because it's tough going at it alone.
For sure. And I know you're very vocal about making those investments and making sure that people understand that, again, you can only go so far by yourself, right? And the fact is, you and I have both spent countless thousands of dollars, if not tens of thousands of dollars, on different coaches to help
Mhm.
guide us in our business practice, maybe in our health practice, wherever it might be. But we see ourselves in an element of a career strategist. And I think like naturally that investment hurdle is tough for people to jump over. So what do you see again, if we're talking about kind of the mental part of this, like how do you convince yourself even to make a 5, 10, $15,000 investment to better yourself as a human being?
I like fast forwarding to the future and saying, okay, let's look at Kyle in 2026. What's he doing? What does his life look like? What's his ideal day? Let's paint out the ideal day. And then let's work backwards and say, how did he get there? And it's likely not alone. So, who was on that board of personal directors that got Kyle there? And then mapping out who I need on that board of directors to get me there. Who do I need to invest in? And it's not just financially, but time and energy and presence with people. And I found that to be helpful for my clients and job seekers in general. Say, hey, where do you want to be in the future? And not just job wise, but just again, as a human or a person, where do you want to be? And then saying, who's going to help you get there can be really helpful for people to recognize, hey, I'm not going to be able to go at this alone.
For sure. And again, you strike me as somebody who has this inherent confidence, right? And again, it takes time to develop that. So if we could just focus on you actually, because I know a lot of people are going to want to understand, like, how do you become somebody like Kyle? How do you have this innate
Mhm.
confidence within you? Can you shed some light on maybe an experience, a moment where you might not have had confidence, right? Something went wrong and what you personally did to get out of it?
I think it's interesting because a lot of people share with me that they think, oh my gosh, Kyle has this amazing confidence. And imposter syndrome is something I've learned to befriend. I think there's this idea that we are saying, okay, there's this imposter syndrome, I'm feeling it. I want to not feel it. And for me, what I've done is say, let me try and feel like an imposter all the time. I want to be in rooms that are really scary. I want to be working with clients that I'm like, oh shit, this person is really scary. I can't believe they're entrusting me with their career. And they're saying, Kyle, can you coach me on this? And their boss is Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, it's scary. And I try and put myself in more and more of those situations. And that's been so incredibly helpful for me to move beyond my comfort zone and then just start befriending that imposter syndrome. And I don't think there's any better anecdote for fear than trying to befriend it and say, you know what, I'm not going to be afraid of you. Let's just be friends together.
It's such a different way of looking at things because oftentimes when we have this feeling of fear, anxiety, overwhelm, stress, whatever it might be, we often want to push it away, run away from it, distract ourselves rather than taking a moment to breathe, pause, and really understand what is that thing. And the reality is, and I'm sure you tell many of your clients this, is that everything you actually want in life is literally on the opposite side of fear.
Hmm.
So I think you do this incredible job of actually getting people to own it, to befriend it, as you said. And I really like that terminology. So, what's your recommendation to a lot of people right now who are applying to roles that might be slightly out of their league or a little bit more senior, right? And they have this imposter syndrome that creeps in? Again, I think there's an element of confidence, but how do you get people to actually look at it? I know you said part of it is getting people to visualize what their life might look like five
Hmm.
years from now. But sometimes people get caught up in the moment. They put so much energy and effort into the moment. They think that this is going to be the end all be all. How do you get people to relax, kind of think, and really process and come in from an energetic state?
Yeah. One thing that's different right now is that we're in the middle of a pandemic. There's a huge demand for jobs, and there's way less supply because of the global pandemic and the financial crisis. So before I used to encourage people, shoot for that role. That one's a lot bigger than you in your experience. But let's go for it. Right now, I'm encouraging people to take a step back and say, maybe that is a lot bigger than you. And there's 10 million plus people on the job market. I don't know the exact numbers. Right now, it's constantly in flux. But I would take a step back and say, what are roles that maybe are a teeny bit too big for me instead of way too big for me? And let me shoot for those. And then where I feel like, oh, maybe I'm not amazing for these, let me seek feedback from people outside of me. And one of my favorite ways to do that is to text a handful of people what makes me fabulous. Because it's really hard for people who are lacking confidence to just pull that internally out of them. So this is really simple, but for people listening, for people watching, text a handful of people what makes me fabulous and see what themes come up there. I promise you, every time I've done this with people, one, almost everyone cries when they do this or gets emotional. And then two, there's themes that come up that are going to set you apart from other people. And this is the beginning of figuring out what's different about you and to boost your confidence. And then on the other side, what I like doing is saying, okay, let's look internally and not just at Edward now, but who is Edward as a child? What lit him up before there was this mask of society of you have to work hard, you have to pursue jobs that will be able to allow you to buy a house, all of that. And then see what are the commonalities. It's kind of like a Venn diagram. On one side, we have Edward as a child. On the other side, we have Edward as an adult, about what's amazing about you, people like. And then in the middle, we have you as a human and what's stayed with you over the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And that little sliver of overlap, that's who you really are and what's truly fabulous about you. And that's what you need to highlight in your job search and will help you stand out from every other person out there. And that can boost your confidence to figure out, oh my gosh, there are things that are really different about me compared to everyone else.
So I have to ask you this because I've actually never seen anyone describe this interesting Venn diagram. And I'm really curious because you highlighted something that can be characterized in a strengths finder test. I
Mm,
personally think that a lot of these tests box people in. They end up serving as a
mhm,
crutch, saying, like, this is the only thing you're good at, or these are the things you're
mhm.
not good at, it, so you can never be good at them. Curious what your perspective is, if you have one, on any of these tests that you've seen outside the one that you've created.
I'm not super familiar with StrengthsFinder. I've done it once or twice, but I'm not super familiar with it. I'm more comfortable and I'm more of a fan of ones that look inside of you and pull it out and say, here's what you're drawn to. And I just got certified. Actually, today I got the certification for strong interest inventory. So it says, here's what you're interested in. And here's other people who are in these roles who enjoy these roles and you might be in alignment with. And then with this information, let's have a conversation and see what's in alignment or not in alignment with you. I find sometimes inventories out there, they just say, here's your strengths. This is what you're great at. Let's focus on them instead of actually having a conversation and diving deeper. And people use it as a crutch. Here's my strengths, or here's my MBTI. I'm introvert, extrovert, done without having a deeper conversation about what that means to you. And I think that's really critical and a misstep a lot of the time when people get involved in these assessments or inventory. And that's why I like the strong, because you actually go through an interpretation with someone like me. I'm going to do the Myers-Briggs next. That's the next certification I'm doing. And again, you go through an interpretation with someone who's certified. And I think that's a key step that a lot of people miss is going internal.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a core part of my practice as well, as making sure that we can kind of break through who you are and what that wall is, right? This internal
Mhm.
barrier that we built for ourselves that runs into resistance. So there's many different approaches, and clearly you've been certified in a bunch of them. So I commend you for going through that process. What I also want to understand is, like, what is your vision for your own practice over the next couple of years, if we can say that. Again,
Yeah.
we just talked about the fact that we can't necessarily build these robust plans,
Yeah.
but as business owners, we have a vision about how we want to help people,
Mhm.
especially in the fields that we're in. So just curious to hear, how do you anticipate kind of growing both yourself as well as your business?
Yeah. I get asked this question a lot, and people say, Kyle, when are you going to hire people on your team? When are you going to be working on huge initiatives? When is your next book coming out? And honestly, I love my day to day. I get to wake up. I get to work on resume projects or LinkedIn projects, or I'm in coaching sessions all day with clients. I do some speaking engagements, and I love my day to day. I work with dream clients, senior managers, executives in Silicon Valley, tech, they're purpose driven. Honestly, there's really very little I change about my day to day. And it's taken a very long time, 4 years as a side hustle, almost 4 years full time to get to this place where I have this business carved out where it's a dream. And every day I feel like is literally vacation. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm getting paid to sit on this coaching call with a client and have these powerful conversations that I love. So if I fast forward a few years, it would honestly probably be very similar to what I'm doing now. And I'm so grateful and humbled to be in this position where I love my day to day, and I really don't want to change that much about it.
I appreciate that answer for a couple of reasons. One is because it's genuinely authentic. But two, it also highlights this common challenge that I find people in the workplace doing, right? We always have to boast ourselves up. Like I want to develop myself. I constantly want to grow. And there's pockets and areas that we can improve, but to fundamentally change ourselves is not a necessity, right? Some people don't want to go into leadership. Some people are happy being an individual contributor. Some people don't want to be a VP and they're happy at a
Mhm,
director role, right? So I think your answer in itself highlights that it's so important to appreciate where you are today and
mhm,
understand that wherever you want to go, and if you don't want to continue to grow, that's perfectly fine. But if you want to grow, that's incredible as well. But be okay with that, right?
mhm.
Society often pushes this message and notion that you constantly have to improve, and that's just not the case. So I commend you for saying that, and I appreciate it. The other thing I want to highlight is that, again, if we go back to the beginning of our conversation, you really talked about how this was an accidental business. And there's a lot of people right now, including some of your clients that you're working with, and they're really keen on starting some sort of side hustle, and they're really focused on what that would look like. How do you get started? So,
Mhm.
from your personal experience, and I get a lot of guests who kind of fall into this space, but I always want to know from you personally, what are some of your biggest piece of advice for somebody starting out in their business right now?
Yeah, so I've went through this journey, and then I coach other coaches, resume writers, service providers to navigate this journey of launching or growing a business. And the biggest advice I would give myself if I could go back, and I give everyone, is to invest in other people, to invest in mentors. Find people who are in your industry doing what you want to be doing in 3 or 5 or 10 years. Learn from their mistakes. Hey, what would you do differently? What did you do that went well? One of my mentors, Wendy Weiner, the writing guru, she's the top executive resume writer there is out there. She's an attorney. And learning from her is invaluable because she's built this amazing resume writing business. And I'm able to learn from her and not make mistakes because I can say, hey, what would you do here? And she can share what she's already done in her business. And it's been invaluable. And then investing in coaches in areas where you're not an expert. This past year, I invested in an accountant, a financial planner. I just had my headshots updated. Investing in these people who are great at things you're not great at has been so valuable. And I wish I would have done that sooner. So I didn't have to worry about my taxes earlier on. I didn't have to worry about financial planning earlier on. I wish I would have invested in those people sooner.
Yeah. So, what I'm hearing really is level up, right?
Hmm.
Is making sure that once you identify what you don't know, it's delegate out. I mean, we can go online and go on this carousel of information, but we're not going to be able to distill it as well as somebody who
Hmm.
spends all of their time, as you said,
No.
doing financial planning. You and I are not photographers, or at least I don't think you are. So,
No.
hence, you hired somebody. So, I think it's so important that we go through this awareness process, right? Go and figure out, as you said, what's in the middle of that Venn diagram. Focus on doing that thing and make that thing shine, and everything else around it,
Hmm.
hire people. That's okay. Make as
Hmm.
much money as you possibly want with that thing that you're good at, and then go hire everyone else around you. And I think that's so important. What I also like about what you said is that you have this opportunity to continue to grow and expand, and you highlighted some of your areas that you wished you focused on. I think everyone has that. So what would be your recommendation to somebody who might be on the younger side, right, stepping out of college, right? I think you and I can agree on the fact that there are things we wished we knew.
Hmm.
We were given a ton of advice, but we never really listened. So what are those three things that you wish you actually listened to?
Oh my gosh. I think the first one would be to just invest in other people sooner. I think the second one is to not plan as much. Again, I'm a huge planner and I try and plan, plan, plan. And up until even 6 months before I made the leap to doing this full time, I never even thought of running my business full time. I didn't know people were career coaches full time on their own. I only knew of my university career counselor. So I didn't even know this was a career. I didn't know people did this. I knew the university career counselor and then the career advisors in my grad program, I didn't know you could run a business like this. So to not try and plan. And then lastly, recognize that there's a tuition of doing business. And what I mean is you're going to make financial mistakes. For example, I spent $1,000 on a magazine ad that didn't get me anything. I had one person call and it was not a fit. So I spent this grand on a magazine ad, but that's the tuition of doing business. We'll spend 100, 150 grand on education and classes and biology and chemistry I don't use, but I don't think twice about that money. But then in our business, if we spend a few hundred or $1,000 on something that doesn't work out, my clients stress out. And I try and remind them there's a tuition in doing business. Some of these dollars you spend, that's just part of doing business and it's not going to work out in your favor. And then other areas, you're going to spend 500 or 1,000 or a few thousand on a coach and make 100,000, 200,000 back. So it's just part of doing business.
Yeah, I love that because it highlights the ROI. How
Mhm.
often does anyone sit there and think, what is the actual ROI on my college degree, getting my biology degree, let alone a master's in healthcare, right? And oftentimes people don't sit and reflect, and that's just part of the system and the design of it. But
Mhm.
investing in yourself, making a conscious personal
Mhm.
decision is so important. And I love
Mhm.
the fact that you're inspiring people to do that. Look, as we wrap up, as we do this with all of our Career Meets World guests, I want to make sure that we put you through the hot seat where we're going to ask you a couple of questions that we ask all of our guests. So, Kyle, are you ready?
Okay. Yes.
Love it. Okay. So, I basically asked this question now of all of my guests because it highlights something really important about the individual. And I believe personally that everyone has something that they would love to teach forever, and there's something that they would want to learn forever. What are those two things for you?
Something career counseling or HR or related, something there. Actually, that strong interest inventory I was telling you about earlier, it gives you 130 different occupations that you're most aligned with the people on that. And I got career counseling back for the number one on mine. And then I went back and I was like, so did I tell them I'm a career counselor? And I didn't. And it literally put career counseling at the very top. And I was amazed. So it says I'm doing the work I'm supposed to be doing. So I would teach career counseling and how to help people find the right job for them. And the reason I love it so much is because it's not just your job, but you're spending 40 hours a week here at work, or 50 or 60, 70 if you're like a lot of my clients. You're paying to put a roof over your kid's head, you're paying for food, all of this. So our careers are so much more than just a job. So I'd love to teach something around career counseling and finding your right fit.
Awesome. What would be one thing that you'd learn forever?
Oh, career counseling as well. I think that'd be the same thing, just in that same niche. I think it's so interesting to keep learning. In this certification I took, it was mostly just learning and applying it to ourselves. And it was so fascinating to learn about ourselves because I had 5 different top interest areas. It was like career counseling, HR, executive, entrepreneur, and marketing. And I was like, that's what I do every day. I advise people on HR components of their work. I run my business. I'm an entrepreneur. I market my business, market my clients. So it's just so much fun.
Love it. Clearly, you have a deep passion for it. And one final question for you really is around learning and it's around reading. So, if you had to read one book for the rest of the time,
Mhm.
what would it be?
There's this book called Present Over Perfect.
Mm,
It's made for Christian women. So I'll just give people that caveat. I didn't know that when I received the book from a friend. So there's parts of it that didn't apply to me. But overall, it's the most powerful book I've read as a recovering perfectionist, to really focus on what you're avoiding by being a perfectionist. And it's super helpful. I've written all over the book, highlighted it, have tabs, and it's so incredibly helpful. And I recommend it to most of my clients because a lot of the people in high tech Silicon Valley are dealing with perfectionism as well.
they definitely are. And what I like about the book is the fact that it's intended for a very different audience. So, it catches people's attention, right? And the
Mhm.
fact that you find it so valuable is definitely something that, again, I am going to jot down because I'm an avid
Mhm.
reader and
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that. Kyle, I want to make sure that people can find you on the
Mhm.
internet. I know you're always camped out on LinkedIn, but what is the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah. So caffeinatedkyle.com is my website. And then, like you said, LinkedIn, Kyle Elliott with 2 L's and 2 T's. I spend a lot of time there. and then Caffeinated Kyle across social media.
Awesome. I'm going to throw an audible at you and just ask you where this fascination with caffeination came from.
I don't know where the fascination came from, but I remember even middle school, I would stop at Starbucks on the way to school because I had money from a young age because I worked during the summers in middle school. So I would stop at Starbucks and then walk to school and drink my coffee. So I've always loved coffee. I don't know where it came from, but I've just always loved it.
I love that. I love the deep appreciation for Starbucks coffee and the fact that you're so honest and open about it. Kyle, it was super fun connecting with you. I know a lot of people listening are going to get tremendous value from this because whether or not you're in a job search right now or you're looking to transition, Kyle is your go-to guy. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. And as we always say on the Career Meets World podcast, go unleash your wildest potential. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.